All right, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. Going to play our quick intro and then bring up our guest. I'm excited. She's a Vedic astrologer. I don't know anything about it. Met her through a friend and who suggested maybe we have a conversation. She's got great energy. We'll get to know her in just a second. So let me put our intro on. If these shows resonate with you, please share. We would appreciate it because we're getting suppressed as usual on social media. How's it going, everybody? First show of the day. I'm a little bit groggy. A lot of energy came in yesterday. It was a very powerful, profound day to me. I don't know how everybody else feels about it. We got a beloved sister by the name of Maggie Hippman on with us this morning. She's a practicing Vedic astrologer who is connected to a living lineage that dates back thousands of years into India. She studied with teachers from all over the world, and today has a private online practice teaching classes and workshops in addition to doing individual consultations. Her approach to the sky is grounded in a deep love of nature and years of dedicated meditation. Hopefully that works. Oh, that's her words to me. We'll get her up here now. All right, let's see. Here we go. We're getting there. Oh, wait, here we go. There you are.
Hello.
What's happening? You don't look anything like the picture that I saw.
For years. I have to adjust my background so that you can't tell that that's a fake.
What? What's fake?
Background.
On the picture?
Yeah, it's actually it's fake. But
I didn't know you were going to be a white girl.
Really, what did you think I was going to be?
I don't know. I read the thing about India, and
right. Yes.
You know, you look like you had a little tan to you and some dreads. I thought, well, she's probably a mixture of like
actually
Caribbean.
That picture on my website was taken when I was in India, so maybe I was getting some of the Indian vibe.
So yeah, and you know, I talked to so many people, and I apologize for the mix-up because you were like the first appointment I set once I started rebooking, and I was still on the East Coast. So I'm glad that. But anyway, it worked out. So I remember talking to the lady that, or the sister that kind of put us together. And I remember her telling me that you weren't real, exuberant about coming on to the camera. And I told, because she wrote me and she said, I think, because I was talking about Vedic astrology with somebody and we just touched on it. And anyway, so she said, yeah, my friend, I mean, she's got it locked and loaded. And I said, well, and she said, well, I don't know if she'll come on. And I said, well, just give it a shot. But ever since I got your messages, I don't know, the energy just felt right. And I have a feeling it's going to be a great show. And maybe we'll do another one, because it seems like it's a pretty big subject. So there's a couple of things that kind of hit me. One was this living lineage to India that you have. Two, your pull to the stars as a result of your connection with nature. I can identify with both of those things. I've never studied the stars. I don't know anything about it. I know it, for me, it's kind of like the cookie crumb trail home. Like a cyclical guide, which I think we're at a point now, and I'm really fired up to get into this conversation, but I think we're at a point now where we've gotten the information. We know what energies are prevalent at certain times based on the cyclical pattern of the celestial and planetary. And what do we do with it? So this is an unconventional talk show. It's really a conversation. I'm really pleased to have you here. Thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence and sharing your knowledge with us. So maybe we could start with what do you mean by living lineage to India?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with the Vedic astrology is part of a much larger system of Vedic sciences, which includes Ayurveda and even yoga, as part of this whole extremely extensive, mystical, amazing body of knowledge. And it's all connected to a living root. It was, like an oral tradition, probably a few thousand years before it was eventually written down and passed on in the Vedas. And to really practice a science like Vedic astrology, you need an initiation. There needs to be some kind of initiation into the tradition. And I have received that in India. So that's the connection to the living lineage. And it does a lot, because I studied for quite a while before I had that initiation. Yeah. And something really does, there's some transmission that the planets open up to you in a different way as sort of living presences, I think, after something like that. So that's the route that I am so grateful for, because it has changed my life.
So now the Vedas are attached to, and I'm just trying to like get it for the 90% here that are in my category. Maybe there's fewer, but so the Vedas are tied to Hindu, right?
Tied to India, yeah. And it
is India or Hinduism or both?
They're very tied into Hinduism, but they preceded Hinduism.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
because the Vedas, that's what they call it. The Vedas have some stories in there that go back, I think other than maybe, if I'm not mistaken, the Sumerians and maybe a couple of other ones that came after that, then the Vedas come in.
There's a lot of intermingling of all of the cultures in the East that contribute to the birth of Vedic astrology and all the other systems of astrology that are happening around that time period. So people argue, scholars argue, everyone argues, the traditional kind of like Hindu people will argue. Mm-hmm. So there's no really definitive on that, but it's definitely, the Vedic culture is an intermingling of the Indo-Aryan people coming down off the steppe and the Dravidian people who are native to India. And that the birth of these intermingling of the cultures has a lot to do with what Vedic astrology is. And it was originally, so much of it was weather magic, actually.
Weather magic?
Weather magic, because
you mean like working with the elements to create rain or whatever?
Yeah, wow. because there was the people coming off the steppe were nomads. So much of their life was dependent on weather. So there's texts, I have texts that are, I don't have one right by me, but they're absolutely amazing. They're traditional texts written in verse describing like what, a particular cloud in a particular season in a certain direction means for 9 months later.
Man, that resonates big time with me, because I know I was a nomad many times. and then when you said that too, because you took the answer out of the question that I had in my head, which was what is unique or different about Vedic astrology as opposed to just, let's just say, general astrology or other specificities of astrology. But you've already started with, there was an origination, or part of the origination was engaging the external air, water, and so on, and creating magic and alchemy.
And even today, one of my first Vedic astrology teachers told me that the highest science in Vedic astrology is omenology, which is called nimitta in that system, which is being able to read nature. And, like the stars in the sky are part of that nature, but the whole thing is a living presence communicating. So being able to understand what different signs, when I'm doing a reading, I pay attention to what's going on around me. So if a phone rings or if someone opens a door. I had one person receive a package like right in the middle of our consultation. That all of that means something. That's also linked. All of those will be linked to some planet, and so I'll check that planet in their chart, and it's a very dynamic system that is completely alive. So that's why I'm in love with it.
Wow. This is cool. Now, do you think that it's a misnomer that it's called Vedic astrology? Should it be called Vedic magic or Vedic weather?
That's
you
a
know
good
what I mean?
question. Well, I mean, the original name is Jyotish, which is the root Jyoti. It means light, so it's a study of light. But within that, there's subcategories within that. And the omenology is one of those. But it's, light as the planets and the stars and the sky and what their relationships and configurations mean, but also light like divinity, like the planets are deified in this system.
Absolutely.
And, offerings are made. And a huge part of Vedic astrology is remedial measures. So like you see what's going on in a chart and it's karma, it's all karma. All the planets are showing karma, but you can target specific remedies. Like I will in almost every reading prescribe some kind of puja or specific mantra or donation or something to kind of like alleviate whatever difficult karma might be in the chart. So it's, you can develop a relationship with these planets.
Yeah, that resonates. So in other words, there's some type of karmic residue from, let's just say, our collective past that was that comes from the physical experience of the planetary evolution, and there's knowledge and wisdom, light code in that information. Mm-hmm. It is a karmic residue, which I would assume would only make sense, like in our own micro, cosmic part of it, that it's there to help us learn, to
absolutely
expand. And not to make the same mistakes again. Something like that.
Absolutely. No, and that's, there's stories behind it that help us understand kind of the purpose of the whole thing. Like, the planets are considered incarnations of Vishnu, who is the sustaining energy of the universe. And Vishnu is showing up up as the planets to deliver just really, completely kind of like objective. There's not really a judgment in it. It's just delivering the fruits of our past actions that were planted, through past lifetimes, and to sustain the law of Dharma, which is the law of nature. So it is, like you said, it's about learning. It's just about learning.
Well, it's interesting because we're living such a fascinating time, and I have a fascinating role. This is part of what I do, and it's so interesting because I don't know anything about Vedic, and I'm only using this as an example, but listening to you and picking up on your energy, and what codes you've opened up in yourself, and then here you are, the 3D part of you answering these questions, and I'm actually picking up, I'm picking up the whole thing, not the whole thing, but I'm picking up enough of it to really understand it. And this is what excites me about 2020 and beyond, is like you take someone like yourself or say 4 or 5 other people that have different specificities of engagement, with the past history, with the internal code, whatever you want to call it. And it's moving so fast. Mm-hmm. It's like, you might have spent, I don't know how many years in India, but you might be able to spend in the future, 1/10 of the time with, say students or apprentices, because the information is moving so fast. I'm just fascinated by what's coming through.
And that's, that's, you can actually see that, like in the sky, we're inside of a humongous transit, which is Saturn and Jupiter, and their transits, when they basically, they can join every 20 years, but in this system, they only change elements every 200 years, and they're in the middle of changing elements. So we're at the end of a 200-year cycle that began basically with the Industrial Revolution and the beginning of another 200-year cycle. And so we're like at this, it's a humongous threshold moment, which I've written a lot about on my website, but I think that's kind of what you're speaking about. It's like when Saturn and Jupiter come together, it's like Shakti. It's like change can happen. They are heavyweight planets karmically. And so everyone is experiencing this just gigantic unfurling of change.
I've often wondered how it all went down, because I've had experiences where, I'm walking outside. Of course, no, I have no evidence of this, like none of the
Right.
good stuff, right? And all of a sudden, my head's up above the stars, and I'm like a giant, or I'll see other things, and it comes in like, oh, this is we were this, and like, so to me, it's like the lineage goes beyond let's just say a star family lineage. It goes to the stars themselves.
Oh,
Just like Earth has birthed us.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
The lineage is ultimately in the earth. It's
Yeah.
ultimately in the plants, in the earth, and the planets. That's definitely.
And so in terms of, God, I didn't know any of this. So to me, Vedic astrology is way more than, hey, the stars are moving this way and the planets have moved that way, and 6 of them are in retrograde. I hear all that stuff all the time. Like, I don't even want to hear about it, but this is interesting. Now, so like with the Dogon tribe, the Aborigines, some of the Native Americans, and they talk about the Pleiades, they talk about, different star family. They talk about, there's a lot of evidence, that star family came down and lived with different civilizations around the earth and taught them things. I know in the Vedas, for example, they have a description, a very vivid description of what was basically a nuclear exchange. And there's other things, blue beans and different things. Do they attribute this information to star family?
I think that probably the language would be different. So this information is said to be divined by the Vedic rishis, who are embodied in the sky as the Big Dipper. The seven rishis, or actually, I think that might be their wives. But the whole thing descends. All of the Vedas is said to be divine, basically like a deep observation of nature.
Yeah.
And so it is, some of that borders on mythological, but it's, so you can't say for certain what's what. But another part of that story is that the level of consciousness, like thousands of years ago when this was being divined and understood by the people who were witnessing it, the consciousness is so subtle and permeable that the relationship to nature was completely different. You could develop a whole science based on just sitting, in the Himalayas or whatever, and observing the stars and observing what's going on internally, and then creating a system of knowledge from that. So that's the root from my understanding. But on an individual level, we are all basically carrying a star with us also to Earth as the nakshatra.
Yeah.
Lord. So we are.
It's interesting. Also. Yeah, it's interesting. Like people talk about, well, and I've downloaded it. I mean, it's in my own space, which is we're universal seeds in some respects. Like we have all these different universal seeds that have had a hand in however you want to describe the narrative, DNA or whatever the case is. But I look at it like, okay, so like we started like one, and I think it was a feminine, a womb, and then it starts splitting. And then it's all that stuff that we see out there. And it's like, we have a piece of every bit of it with us. And they're like, I don't know. So at the end of the day, we look like we're this small little player when in fact we contain it all,
Right. And I think that's the beauty of the Eastern philosophies in general, I think, is that it's like, it's all inside us. We don't have to go anywhere to feel that.
Yeah. I read that stuff for a few years in my 20s, and it used to frustrate me a little bit because it was like, I don't know. I'm more like motivated, inspired, I want to do something. I want to change the world. And it was almost like, oh, everything's relevant, but nothing matters. And I'm like, man, I can't deal with that. Like, well, I'm here. I'm Todd. I'm going to do something while I'm Todd. You know what I mean? But other than that, I love the old stuff. I really do. So how does Vedic astrology work in terms of like one-on-one engagements, or when you're teaching a class? I mean, what kind of information can somebody gain in order to enhance or expand their lives or bring them into further alignment?
That's a great question. And I think I'll start with what you said, was that it basically functions as a map. It's a karmic blueprint, and it's also like an X-ray of the psyche. So you can see the karmas are showing up in the form of the planets, but what you're seeing is basically tendencies. So
tendencies
as you're
to.
speaking to me and you're talking about like what, you know, like that motivation you have, and I'm automatically, my brain is thinking, well, this is like a Mars situation or something, but it's definitely a Pitta constitution, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And ultimately that boils down to the elements, like what the elemental predominances are in the constitution. That gets into Ayurveda. So it's everything, you know. I always have trouble answering that question, I think, because you can look at anything. There's so much but for me, a lot of times, maybe the most important is the psychological orientation to life and the places that you might get caught up in life, which you can see really clearly.
Okay. So, this is cool. I like this. Okay. So let's say that, okay. So there's been a lot of empath, narcissistic revelations in the last, as long as I've been on social media actively, like 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been. So there was a lot of empath groups, empath support groups. Hey, this was my experience. People talked about being in narcissistic relationship with a narcissist, overgiver, overtaker, dominant, subservient, these types of things. If let's say that I'm an empath, and when it comes to like inner work, it's real easy for me to identify with the empath part, but it's not real easy for me to identify with, because I'm not like that. But we know we're made up of all this stuff. Is there a way to, based on when you're born and where the patterns are, to kind of look for those tendencies and those things that might be up for review?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that's kind of what the whole thing is, because each of those things that you're describing is going to fall under the category of at least, you know, one or more planets. So then it's an evaluation of how that planet is posited in the chart. And a lot of times, you know, maybe there's going to be a blind spot in that area. And some of those things actually, it's like they kind of require karmic remedies. Like some things, you know, unless you want to work for lifetimes on this one thing, you can expedite the process.
No. I don't want to work for lifetime. I didn't come here for that.
So you can expedite the process with really targeted mantras. Specifically, I work a lot with mantras, which are basically, it's all like prescription. So to the individual chart. So there might be a specific form of Ganesh for the sign of Scorpio, where you have this thing going on, and a 40-day mantra sadhana, you know, can start to it basically changes the landscape of your experience, which is a really cool thing to experience, not just because life can get easier, but because you see how everything is connected and that the whole thing is alive, and you can actually get in there and start to work with things.
And so, like, what's this thing called, a duja?
Puja.
No. It starts with a D, and they do something to your head. I don't know if it's
diksha.
A diksha.
That's right? Initiation.
Somebody did that to me one time, man. I was in Salt Lake City, and I had to drive back to Provo, which was like, say, 30 miles. And there's some friends that I met, a couple, and they're like, we're going to do a Diju or whatever it's called. And I'm like, what's that, man? And I think I got on my knees. I closed my eyes, and the lady, the sister, was doing Diju or whatever she was doing to me. And I watched her husband, third eye, get up off the couch and come over to me and start doing some stuff. When I opened my eyes, I thought he was going to be standing next to me. He was still on the couch. So I'm driving back to Provo, and I'm going through like this little valley with mountains on each side, and I started tripping. I thought I was like so I don't know what that thing was. But
you don't live in Utah though, do you?
Are you?
Because I am in Utah. I'm actually in Utah.
What part?
I'm in Spring City, so a little south of.
Oh, south of Salt Lake?
Yeah, 2 hours south.
Okay. So my friends, I have lots of friends there, but I've got some friends that if you go to Salt Lake, you got to hit me up, okay? Because I got to hook you up with them. And everyone that I've sent over there comes back smiling. So you just have to let me. Very cool people. So I was going to go back to, the part about how it would assist us in navigating our life, okay? So, do you start with the birth date, time, and place?
Birth date, time, and place. Yes. And essentially, I mean, I'm looking at a map of time. So I think, and timing is a really huge part of Vedic astrology. So there's so much I want to say. It's like, it all wants to come out. But like muhurta, picking auspicious times is a really, in India, this is happening for everyone from getting married, everyone's picking an auspicious muhurta because it's the seed of the whole unfolding of an event, just like the seed of your life was the moment of your birth reflected in what's going on in the sky. But there's also a lot of different ways. It's very sophisticated with a lot of different dasha systems, which is a timing system. So you can look at what's active at what periods. Aside from transits, that's a whole different thing. So you can see kind of what karma is up when, and also talk about when you're transitioning, because when you're in a specific planetary period, you think that that's you, that energy. If you're in a Mars dasha, you are totally the embodiment of Mars. You have so much fire. And then if you switch dasha 10 years later, however long a dasha is, it can be really disorienting. You're all of a sudden under governance of a different element and a different planet. So that's always something I talk about with people, because it's just,
I'm happy to know that.
Yeah, it's
I'm
nice
happy to know that, because I've gotten accused of. I thought, I judged myself, and I thought, like, I remember this one time I was in Houston and my wife was in Australia, and I said, this big star keeps looking at me, So every time I walk outside, it's there. And so I looked it up and it was Mars. And she said, yeah, it's a universal brown eye because you're being an asshole, But I actually was going through a period at the time where I probably was. And I thought, now I realize it wasn't me, it was Mars. The dharma, the karma part of it, I was a little bit like, but now I understand what you're saying more clearly. This is the karmic aspect is really the energy that's prevalent at the moment. It's not really based on your own, mistakes or errors or failures, or, when you do something wrong to somebody. I mean, it is, but I'm just saying the energy is, there's like a collective mood. There
is definitely. Transits show kind of the collective karma, I would say. So I would say that the whole chart is showing karma, and actually a really important thing is to not blame the planets. Which is so, we all want to do that. It's very normal. Believe me, I know.
Well, what's the difference between blaming the planet and blaming a person? I mean, you're still not taking,
right.
You're still not owning it.
Yeah. And I think kind of the main thing it's trying to teach is, it's just the whole impersonal nature of the thing. I think it's a really nice medicine for the kind of like Christianized culture, because there's so much of the sin like ingrained in us generationally. And this is just so much bigger than that. It's like, it's just nature unfolding, even if it feels like terrible experiences, and you could say it's bad karma, which I never use that word. It's still just a process of nature trying to kind of correct itself. So I think
correct itself. I like that.
Yeah.
And the macro and the micro working together. That's why I said, when you said that earlier and it just kind of all came in, I thought, oh, wait a minute. Well, that's us then. And it looks like we were, which we were, really, really big. And here we've gotten, because everything's always upside down. It's all paradoxical, it seems like. You think the human's really small, but in fact, we're containing everything. And you look at something really big, and then, and then you have a little integration or merging with that planetary object, and you're the same size and everybody's equal. It's crazy. And it's crazy that the consistency of what survived. Like this was an oral kind of thing, then they put it in writing, and you can see the common thread, even through some of the whitewashed, altered, modified stuff. There's still this seed of truth, I guess.
And even it's said that if the Vedas, I remember reading somewhere that some saint or sage saying that even if the Vedas disappear, like even if they are destroyed, they will at some point in history, some point in the future, be remembered again, because it's just nature. It's just like, these are the laws of nature, basically, like encoded and written down, but they can't be destroyed. You know what I mean? It's so beautiful in that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. People talk about the cycles, they talk about the 26,000 year cycle and this cycle and that cycle. And, there is no time but seasons, right? So, you know what I mean? So it's like, and it seems to me like with what's been going on, I've been having these thoughts of, well, I wonder if we've designed, in the cycle, which is really like, hey, it's coming, there's nothing you can do about it kind of thing, that we're being taken back to what we might call a primitive existence. no electricity, no, just back to the bare bones. And to me, that would be, like, to your point, that would be when we reacquaint ourselves with all of that, because all of this other stuff is gone. You know what I mean? So we're just relying on the natural stuff.
Yeah. And it's hard to
me.
hear any of that with all the distractions of all the stimuli we're presented with. How could anyone like divine a system of Vedic astrology when we have cell phones in our face constantly? Like, there's no way. You have to be so subtle.
Unless they have an app for it. But you're right. Somebody comes along and they are the app. An ice age comes, some dude, some chick walks out of the cave and looks up, and then boom, they get the download, just like many of us have gotten downloads on other specificities, right?
Exactly.
Wow. So now you teach classes, right? Okay. And so, like, what do those consist of? I'm just curious.
They're, like right now I'm teaching an introduction to Vedic astrology. So it's kind of going through the basics with the planets and the signs and the houses, and a little bit about the nakshatras, which are the lunar mansions, which this is something I think that is also unique to Vedic astrology. It's kind of actually in the Vedic system, the lunar zodiac preceded the solar one. So there's this backdrop of these 28 nakshatras, 27 or 28 nakshatras, which are considered the abodes of the moon. There's a lot of mythology around that. And then came the solar zodiac with the 12 signs that we know. So both of those are operating inside the charts that I'm looking at. And
somewhere I came across there's a 13th sign.
That's what the Western system will say. The Vedic system will say, no, it can't possibly be because of the way that the way that this system is really wedded to time. And we need to talk about probably the difference in the zodiacs, because that is always a question that people have, and it's something I have to address in my classes too, because the Western and the Vedic zodiacs are fundamentally different.
Well, we know the Westerners effed everything up. So let's just take, for example, the reason I brought that up is because years ago I met this guy. He was born the same day I was, which is December the 9th. And he showed me the 13th thing. And I don't know if it came from Western or Eastern or whatever. And it's like a 2-week period, somewhere between whatever comes before Sagittarius and Sagittarius. So I thought, well, that's kind of strange. What are the differences for someone, my birthday, somebody else's birthday? Like, what would be different? Or do the signs align with each other, Western and Vedic, or is there a distinct difference?
The signs are the same. The mythology behind the signs will be different. The names of the signs are different. But the whole thing is shifted 24 degrees. And actually the Vedic, it's a sidereal zodiac. So that means it's actually accurate to the sky. So like, if I see Mars in Pisces right now at about 5 degrees, I can look up at the sky with my little Sky View app, and Mars will be in Pisces at 5 degrees. But in the Western, so if you're using the tropical system, that won't be the case. It'll be 24 degrees different. So that's the main difference. And that's really important for timing, because, to have the system actually wedded to the sky, I think is important for various timings. But so your whole chart can be different because of that. 24 degrees, a sign is 30 degrees. So 24 degrees is a big deal.
A sign is 30 degrees. Right.
Yeah. So everything
there is no way you could talk about this stuff and explain this in an hour. You'd have to have, even for the basics, you'd have to have a few hours, wouldn't you?
For a class, you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, like, just the basics, just to understand.
You'd
have to.
Yeah. I've been studying for 10 years, and I will be studying my whole life, and still not know everything.
So have you gotten some type of, like, on a personal level, just a knowing at some point that was beyond just, something that you, oh, wow, I really like that, I'm going to pursue that? Or, was there something that came in like, Krishna, and I'm not being funny because I totally, but like, was there a moment where you're like, oh my God, this is my deal, I got to do this?
Yeah. It sort of fell on my doorstep. It didn't happen. It was never like something I sought out. It just kind of came into my life. And as soon as it did, I just had a voracious appetite for it, and I could not put it down. I couldn't stop studying. And since that time, I would say it's just been kind of an evolution of becoming my kind of relationship with the sky, becoming more and more kind of subtle and developing a little bit more into a felt sense, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm still very, Vedic astrology is really like rule oriented. And so I'm grounded in that. But this other thing is kind of coming in that's maybe a little bit more intuitive with it.
Yeah. That seems to be that seems to be from where I sit. Talking to different people that are involved in different things, over 2,000 shows, and it's almost like they're doing a remix. Like they're taking what was there, they're combining their experience of their incarnations and whatever else they can, like whatever you've done, I can plug into, and vice versa, and then they're remixing it. They're like, which is kind of cool. Expanding.
Because it has to be adapted to a modern context, especially. Yeah, a system like this, you have to adapt it in time and also in culture, because it's coming from a whole different culture. So to map it onto the Western world is like, that does require a little bit of like paying attention to what's actually going on and seeing how it works. Yeah.
Now, you spent some time in India, quite a bit of time getting initiated. Was that painful? No, I'm kidding. But because India is huge. I mean, we're talking a billion people, right? We're talking a billion people. Is Vedic astrology very prolific in India, or is it a mix?
Oh, it's very prolific, especially I was in South India. It's very prolific there, but I would say all over. It's actually more prolific than yoga, which when I was in India, I did not see one Indian doing yoga.
Well, that's good. I'd fit in there because I've never done it. I look at it going, I don't know, but I know it's a good thing. And I've heard that it wakes a lot of people up. They start doing yoga and then boom, they go off like Reiki, So that's cool. And because you don't really hear a lot about it. I mean, I've read some books, some of the secret societies, not the Illuminati type, like the fakers and the yogis, and some adepts that live in, certain communal type, things. And but you don't really hear about the day-to-day things. So it is a big deal over there. I mean, they don't say, hey, are you a Virgo or a Sagittarius?
No, they're going to open your chart. And it's really common. So like there was puja almost every day I was in India. It's just a regular part of life. It was very refreshing, actually.
What is puja?
Yeah, so it's a Vedic ceremony. So there's a fire involved. There's a Vedic priest. He's chanting mantras. He's making offerings into the fire. A lot of times there's really beautiful sort of like drawings and statues, and it's pretty elaborate. But it's meant to propitiate the various deities, a lot of which are in common with Hinduism, but we can't necessarily say Hindu deities.
Yeah, I know there's a mix there, and I can't think of the other vein of whatever you want to call it. So do they does those from a Vedic perspective, do they look at external planets, stars, deities as something external from the human, the human soul? Like in other words, do they see themselves on the same level? Do they consider themselves gods, goddesses in the flesh, that type of thing?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a good question too. Both, I would say. Like the external, yes, the external planet, but it's kind of indicating an internal situation. So it exists like the sun in the sky, it exists internally as various things, one of which is like on a physical level, your spine. So the spine is like part of your body that is the sun. So you have the sun in your body in that really concrete way, and every other planet will indicate body part, but it's also your sense of self, your self-confidence, your ability to kind of shine in the world. Like there is a felt sense associated with the sun. It's your soul. So, I mean, yeah, it's both, I would say. And that teaching, I think, would be that it's both, but it's not, there is no separation. There's
I think, and maybe, and maybe that's just part of, the dualistic ride that we designed here, because I think in the Western culture, it's probably the same thing, really, when you think about it, because, there's no separation, there's only one, yet we spend our whole, existence, navigating through what these perceived differences are, and they really get down first and foremost to, you know, these essences and different energies and entities that seem to be external. So many people have, over the last 4 or 5 years, myself included, you know, had the experience of, you know, I was talking to this essence and that essence. I mean, I used to work a lot with Kuan Yin and Jesus and Magdalene. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're in here. You know what I mean? So I think there's always that little, you know.
I think that also that I can speak to that a little bit, that getting to that like oneness, you know, like I do see this, I do see this as a map back there, because it's like, you can't make that leap from like where you are to just all of a sudden everything is one without understanding the nuances of the duality, and the getting to know the planets, and specifically in a system that is so elaborate, like understanding how the elements are connected and how everything is some indication, really specifically of some planet, actually allows you to like genuinely approach that oneness in a way that might be meaningful.
And this, you know, what's so far out about the whole thing is, so we're talking about one little, you know, minuscule iota of the multiverse. And, you know, and you look at what's out there, you know, a billion galaxies, a billion stars in each galaxy, and it just goes on. Man, we are colossal. It's colossal.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I agree with what you said about the oneness thing too, because I often look at it like the mother took a breath, you know, and we went, you know, we're out there pushing an envelope, is, you know, depending on where we want to ride, and then it starts to get pulled back, you know. And if you just sucked it back in, I mean, it'd fry our brains.
Yeah,
you know,
no one can handle all that.
Yeah,
you
it'd
have
be
to
too
prepare.
much. Yeah, absolutely. So now you seem to be very dedicated to what you do. Do you do this full time? And how much time do you spend every day? I mean, I'm looking at you thinking, okay, she's got like a routine. She gets up and she does some chanting and some mantras and yoga. You know what I mean? Am I right?
Yeah, I do. I do definitely. Mantra is a really big part of my my practice, among other things, and meditation. I devote quite a bit of time. It's basically full time. I have done, another part of my life has been wilderness work with kids. And so I have occasionally supplemented with that, but more and more, especially in the last little while, it's been basically a full time.
Yeah. So I just realized this. So you're in Southern Utah. I've driven through there 2-3
sort
times.
of. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say Southern.
But I mean, like, say, for instance, you're because that corner of Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, there's Navajo, Hopi reservations there.
Yeah, all of that.
You ever hang out over there?
No, I would like to, but I haven't.
Well, maybe the Indian, the brothers and the sisters over there need to be exposed to a white girl talking Vedic astrology.
Okay. I'd like to be exposed to what they have to say. They probably have their own.
Oh, I know, man, right? Yeah, like the Zunis and the Hopis and Navajos there. I got called there a few years ago. You know how when you get some of those downloads when you first wake up and you're like, I got to go now, you know, and you think it's literal. I got to go, like, you know, dance in the Snake River, you know, naked, and then you start to realize you did go there, or you were there. It's all the same thing, you know, kind of thing. I have deep respect for India.
Have you been?
No, I've never been. They unfortunately won't let me out of the country at this time. Everyone's trying to get in. I'm trying to get out.
Oh, you are? Okay.
But it'll happen in time. There's a reason for it. But when I started, when Soulology was given to me, this would have been in 2011. And I walked the streets for a couple of years. So I was only like using a flip phone. So there's only like 400 or 600 people in it, you know. And but once I got off the streets, I started to connect, you know, purposely connect and try to send this energy, which was mostly through my writing and stuff. And but I made a lot of friends in India. And I think to this day, I want to say New Delhi is like the 4th largest city represented in the network, but a lot of really powerful, cool people. I mean, poets and just really illuminated people, really just, I don't know. I've never been there, but some of the energy that I picked up is really kind of old school. you know, kind of like
It is, yeah.
family, you know.
It's a different place.
I hate to use the words like ethical and moral, but I mean, just, you know, the whole thing with the sexual energy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in kind of a original way, like the natural way, just the way they look at things. And maybe, you know, maybe I'll get over there one day. I'm hoping.
Well,
to.
it made me think, what you're saying made me think of something, and that's that different places on the planet will impact your chart differently. So like
Really?
Locational astrology is a Western thing, but I actually use it. I use it with the sidereal zodiac, and that's a lot of people come for a locational consultation. So like India might, you know, maybe that specific spot in India is somehow fruitful for your chart. You know, maybe it evokes a certain energy or something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember I had a heavy download like in the first two or 3 years. So it was a few years ago, and there was like 9 lives came in. You know, they were just like, da, 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 you know, and 2 of them were in India, and they were like teacher, you know, spiritual dude, you know, whatever, you know, kind of thing. So I know, and you know, and of course, I think maybe really the reality is even if it's at a minimum through the Beehive connection that we all have, like the Beehive Intelligence, the shared collective mind, we've touched everything. And we can touch everything, you know. It's as simple as, you know.
It's so much about remembering.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen from your perspective? Where do you think we're at as a whole? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, what the hell is going on? Yeah, I mean, check out my blogs on my website, because I've definitely written a lot about it. But the main center point of this whole situation is this 200-year cycle change, which Saturn and Jupiter are evoking in the sign of Capricorn. So they are in Capricorn in the Vedic system right now in transit. Jupiter's about to retrograde out in the next couple of days, but then he will be back. And in the fall, it's full bore. Then it really begins. That's
what do you mean? What do you mean? Let go or be dragged, or just put your seatbelt?
Yeah, because the thing about Capricorn, the sign Capricorn is movable earth. So it's basically like a bulldozer, you know, for everyone's reality. And you can see that like the good ideas or whatever, like on an individual level, on the collective level, are not going to cut it. It has to be something that will actually hold water, like in terms of, you can see, I've definitely seen in my personal life, like things that are flaky or not really
I see what you mean.
rooted is
I see
just
what you
going to
mean.
be washed. Yeah.
So like,
Capricorn will not allow.
Yeah, like something that truly equilaterally serves the collective, like the highest and best, versus some selfish, you know, initiative.
Yes.
So let's go back to this, because I want to be prepared. Okay. So I've never heard anyone talk about the 200-year thing. So you're taking the 200-year thing, which would have started what, like the early 1800s, I guess, or sometime 1800s.
Let's see, where are we now? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I know. Then your 3D brain just leaves now, right? The further we get along. So now Jupiter, I've always been, and I think it's my planet, you know, because I've had people send me stuff before, but Jupiter's always been obviously very prominent. Saturn is, and that's the 2 you're talking about, Jupiter and Saturn. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they're doing a dance for 200 years, and it's kind of a no BS. Everybody, you know, everybody's going to be stripped down to the bare bone, and let's see what we can do, kind of thing. And you're saying it's starting to culminate.
So it's okay. So the main important thing to know is that, how do I want to say this? So the major change comes from the fact that they're changing elements. So they're always moving, they're not always together, but they kind of come together at these critical points in the zodiac every 20 years. And that's creating its own kind of change, just more like generationally. And then every 200 years, bam, the whole kind of undercurrent of their influence changes. So we're moving from fire, which is super driven, wanting to achieve at all costs, you know, like making a lot of sacrifices to kind of move in one certain direction, which is totally what our civilization has been doing for the last 200 years. A lot of even like burning of fossil fuels, you know, heat has just been really involved in what has been going on.
What element are they moving to?
so they're moving to Earth, which is why I'm saying like it, you know, everything has to be reoriented in a way that is actually sustainable, because it has, you know, it has to be grounded in that. So on a personal level, you might see like changes related to how you are with your own health, for example. Like you can't just ignore the things that you might in the past have been able to just, you know,
that one's been speaking to me a lot.
Okay.
It has. The body's been speaking a lot.
The body, like, which is your Earth, you know.
I know, and I'm like going, okay, I know you're on board now, and I respect you as a consciousness, but can I have a little more fun for just a little bit longer?
Yeah, and there will be that negotiation for a while. That's kind of.
Well, I got that. I did. I got that. I was like, okay. I got that. It was like, okay, you know what's going to happen is it was kind of, the message came, it was like, don't worry about it. Don't sit there and ingest something and go, oh my God, I'm hurting myself. Just chill the F out. And at some point, you're just not going to go there.
Right. You know? It can happen very naturally.
Yeah. It's like a seamless transition.
Yes. I like that. I'm all about that. And then collectively, you can see that, we've just built our whole thing so top heavy. It's not going to work in this new cycle that's coming. How long it takes to actually find some kind of like sustainable balance and what is required in that is a whole nother, you know, it kind of remains to be seen basically, but we know that we're crossing that threshold, it's like a collective initiation, which I'm sure, you know, like many people have said.
In Texas, we call it a collective ass kicking.
A collective what? Ass kicking? Yeah, I mean, it depends. You know, if you were like uncomfortable already with the system as it was, then in some ways it can be a little bit of a relief.
Yeah, I just like to make jokes about it. I think you know, it's all so fascinating at the end of the day that I think sometimes we just like to take, it's not the red pill or the blue pill, it's the chill pill. Just chill out for a little bit.
No, I get that. I do get that.
You know what I mean? I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about this, you know, life in general. Now, you mentioned earlier, you referred to Jupiter as a he. There's a lot of, I have two questions. I'm sorry. There's a lot of talk about mama's home, like the imbalance, the patriarchal. Some people get caught up in the masculine, feminine, war of the sexes thing, and hopefully that's all coming to, you know, but, and I don't know if that's a new age thing. I don't like that term, but you know, whatever. How does the masculine, feminine fit into the Vedic explanation?
That's a real juicy question. So all of the planets are personified. They have very specific images associated with them and characteristics. And most of them are male, except for the moon, which is considered to be female. But so there's that. But the larger picture is there's a dynamic with the masculine and the feminine, specifically with the moon and the sun, which is elaborated a lot in the mythology, and I would say is very rich and deep. And when you go into it, it really doesn't have anything to do with the whatever gender you might be born in. It's more of like internal aspects. Yeah. Everyone is navigating all of the time. So there's a lot to say on that, but I would say it's fairly sophisticated, but yeah, you do have to take into account that it was filtered through a culture that was pretty masculine dominated for a long time.
I mean, we can go back into a lot of different explanations and narratives going back 10,000, 15,000 years and how it was set up, but there's no doubt it's affected it all. But there's still, and a lot of people that I try to keep information coming in that I didn't know. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I mean, like researching, but there's a lot of credible people that cite the Veda, the history, that whole perspective, and they talk about, there's a lot of validity to it. There's a lot of evidentiary stuff in it, you know, and for lack of a better word, proof. There's a lot of stuff in it that's kind of been like put over here and like they're not even looking at it. You know what I mean? I mean, I've sat there and watched stuff and it's just fascinating.
I think that what I like about it is that so any of the Vedic sciences, like once you get into them and you experience what's going on, even with Ayurveda and eating different foods and different herbs and its effect on your mental health and, you know, like your energy levels and all that, it's just really experience. Like I don't even get really into the conversation about belief because it has nothing to do with it for me. Like it's not even relevant. Experience. I've had so much experience that confirms all of this, in so many different ways that it's not a question anymore to me. But
Isn't
I
that the
don't
truth?
also expect anyone who hasn't had the experience to believe,
Yeah. Somebody said I would assume Venus is feminine. I think Venus.
Yeah. No, actually in this system, Venus is also male.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, here's the way I look at it. They could all be male, but all the black space in between, that's her. Like, she's not going anywhere.
I like that. I like that.
You know what I mean? Like, show me a male that can hatch produce. No, I'm sorry. And I've been visited by her too many times, so I'll hail the mother, but I just like to play around with it. But yeah, I like what you said too about, it's not about belief systems. Like, one of the things that I think that's happening is we are being either forced or flowing into what is being present. Like, be present. And if you're not going to be present, we're going to have a little gift for you tomorrow, Todd. We're going to slap you in the head with a 2x4, whatever the case is, forcing us to be present, which is really our higher aspects and all that stuff. And we can go into all that. But when you mention experience and feeling, and I guess I would probably throw in energy, / feeling, there's kind of some type of wash over there, but it's like, that's really it, isn't it? I mean, it's like, you just know, it's like putting a kid in a big room full of toys with a bunch of toys, and they go to what they like, they go to what they know, they go to what makes them feel right, and I think that's really the new navigation.
I think absolutely, and that's exactly what you're saying is kind of like, that is the Capricornian navigation. That's the earth-based feeling feeling into the actual situation, being present for the actual situation, not in our heads as much.
No, I feel that, we just relocated. Well, I'll say relocated. We've been trying to, we've been directed to Arkansas in these crystal beds, and it's very natural, like the 4, 5, 6 times in the last, since I started this in 2016. And anyway, so we're here, and I keep getting pulled. Like, I want to go fishing. I want to go to the mountains. I want to go to the streams. I want to go. I mean, I'm sitting here the last 4 or 5 nights dealing with the fairies and nature beings and animals, and they're all, they're all Sasquatch. They're all talking to me and like, "Hey, man, we're fixing to start this party," and I know I'm going to end up butt naked out there dancing around a fire, and I hope I don't get arrested. But, and I'm making a joke, but the urge, the rocks and the dirt and the, you know what I mean? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think that's going to be there for everyone if we're listening.
Yeah.
The problem will be if we're not listening. I think then that's when it's going to get a little bit hard for people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And it's trippy because it is we spend our time observing our mirrors, right? And we're like, oh, he does this and she does that. And we get to this point, we're like, oh, where is it in me? But it's starting to get like really like, hey, if that person can't see what I'm seeing in them, what is it in me that I can't see? It's like, you got to be really careful, because you talk about karmic retribution. It's now impacted what we think. You don't have to say anything, and you don't have to do anything. If you think something, you're going to be brought, it's like the goddess Kali love. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't come, she's not coming. She loves you, but she's coming here to,
it's fierce love.
Yeah, it is fierce love.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'd love to collaborate with you again if you're open to it.
Yeah, I would love that too. I'm a little bit shy, but I don't mind doing an interview. It's fun for me also.
Yeah. Well, this is a conversation. So, this isn't really an interview. I mean,
that's easier.
It took a while to get to this point. Now, some people still come on. They're like, I want to promote this. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. You have to go somewhere else. We're just going to talk about what's going on. That's, to me, the most valuable thing we have. It's just taking this Akashic, so to speak, information that we brought in, combine it with the experience, then sitting down and combining all the frequencies we can through audio, video, and whatever, and just letting it come through. It's not always the literal explanation. It's just the code that's exposed to the authenticity, honesty, grace, love, courage, and wisdom. And thank you for sharing space with us on a unique and fascinating subject. I look forward to doing it again if you're up for it.
I'm up for
Great.
it. Yeah. And thank you for making space for the mystery. I think that's really valuable.
Absolutely. And we'll be headed to Utah at some point. So maybe
well, let me know.
Yeah, maybe we can hook up.
Yeah.
You take care. Peace out, everybody. See you whenever the next one is. Don't ask me when. My 3D memory's gone. Take care. I'll see you later. Thank you so much.